I'm Kat and welcome to my Clay Oddity Club. Today's first episode will be dedicated to Big Bot Bash from the channel Build Making Stuff. If you love people with true passion, you love Scratchbuilding, RPG, or you simply need the perfect bedtime video as it started for me, go and subscribe to him. Our robot couldn't have been created without Big Bot Bash generator. All you need is D20 or online rolling dice, and now we are at the point where we start creating our robot. It's that simple. I spent the next few days making sketch and searching through my boxes and thrift shops for potential robot parts. Finding a perfectly round plastic bubble for his head was quite a challenge. A piece of advice for my future self: don't get frustrated that there are no Christmas decoration anywhere just before Easter. Sometimes you have to destroy something in order to build something better. Apparently, there's a Sanderson quote, but I don't take responsibility for it. But that's just how it's sometimes, and we're starting our first day with that. Plan for this day was simple: create a skeleton. I used wire and hot glue. This is also time when we begin to perform our robot posture. This is important moment. We can give it character, a history that goes with it. My goal was a leaning position with long searching hands, which provides support for the entire body and two big heads. To secure bent and hatched torso, I used ball of aluminum foil, which I attached with the previously mentioned hot glue. The next step that same day, I decided to encase the limbs using a plastic tube taken from a pen. After treating it with a Dremel and attaching the tubes to the wires, super glue came into play. The stronger construction allowed me to focus on the posture and leg positioning once again. Epoxy putty. Handling this material is incredibly simple. We combine the yellow and blue parts in a 1:1 ratio, mix well for 5 minutes until the green color is achieved. Material like milliput and green stuff can be used with water for better mixing and smoothing. Now all that was left was to frame and reinforce the torso and shape the lower body. I wanted to smooth out the rough edges a bit and prepare for further modifications. The next step was to fill all the gaps. Day 3, and we are here with updates and the next phases of building our robot. I thickened the torso with leftover epoxy putty, and I finished the arms in the same way as the legs using a thick plastic straw. And today we are working with an underrated material I discovered thanks to Bill's video, EVA foam. It's flexible, works well with super glue, and perfectly replicates sheet metal. Late that same evening, I decided to return to the epoxy and finish the arms, which, following the sketch, needed to become more visible, as did the joint in the hands and legs. On the day 4, I'm introducing you to the garden wire, another precious material in Scratchbuilding. Just before turning on the camera, I tested the most optimal way to wrap it around the limbs, and as you can see, it turned out great. You can also see that I'm winding the cable around the straw, making it into a spring made wrapping it easier. A tip from Dice Darlings. I end the day wrapping all the limbs, permanently mounting it using super glue, and thinking I no longer need to trust the process. Most of the beginning of day 5 took place off camera. It was a tough day, but it paid off in the form of our robot's hands and feet. Using beads, thin wire and super glue, I managed to create perfect ones. After securing them in place with additional wire and, let's just say it loud, super glue, I cut small strips of EVA foam to cover the attachment points. At first I wanted to hide the palm with EVA foam too, but the wires look like robotic veins, so I left them. Our robot at this stage only needs a little flavor. It was also time when I could use my latest treasure, found for pennies at the thrift shop. Among them were these little plastic beads. They serve as beads for the robot's sheet metal. Despite the arduous process and the glued up fingers, it was a satisfying time. Finally, our robot is starting to become an old rusty machine traveling the wasteland. For balance, the sheets that I didn't cover with beads were treated with a blade, creating small holes and damage. That day, I also resolved the dilemma regarding the eye of our robot. I chose a smaller eye with a metal frame, which gave it more flavor. Detailing were so captivating that I ended the day working on the terrain the robot would traverse. Using scraps of styrofoam I had left over from other projects, I started trying to create the best layout so that the robot would be stable on it. Day 6. Continuing work on the terrain. For the next step, we need a mixture of glue, paint, and in this case, sand. My base was supposed to be similar to uneven terrain covered with sand and dirt. Next, the rocks also needed coating, so I created a protective layer from a mixture of glue and paint. It's always a good idea to cover the diorama terrain with a single color to achieve a natural effect. It's a big day. It's painting day. Behind the camera, I added some rust made with baking soda and superglue. Robot was also primed and painted black. I started the painting process with terrain and brown tones, then brightened them with warmer sand-like colors. The next step, and probably the favorite of most, was adding the light by dry brushing. The method is simple. Take a small amount of paint and, using a paper towel, wipe the brush until it leaves almost no marks. Apply paints as if you were dusting with energy but subtle pressure. Now our terrain looks like a dusty, sandy wasteland. Starting with the head, the same shade of brown ended up on our robot. I then add an orange lava and yellow color to the brown palette to begin brightening out the rust and discoloration, adding also light and bringing out detail. In the final stage of the day, I apply the first coat to the eye and cover the limbs with bronze. I finish it off with a dry brush and metallic paint. The grand finale. Only minor details remained for the final result. Of the camera, I added light blue elements to part of the limbs to spice up the robot flavor and give it a retro feeling. I have to admit, after applying the base color, my painting technique is always incredibly chaotic. It's a good thing that technology has given the human race the power of film editing, so I leave you with the final touches and see you at the final reveal. Thank you for watching. It's my first video and I hope it wasn't too chaotic. Like and subscribe if you would like to join Clay Oddity Club, and follow me on Instagram for updates about my upcoming projects.